People like you shouldn't even be allowed in here. Victoria Sterling's voice sliced through the marble lobby of Technova Industries as Jerome Washington stepped through the glass doors. The black delivery driver froze, his worn scanner still beeping in his hand. 20 executives in the pristine lobby turned to stare. Some reached for their phones. Victoria's $3,000 heels clicked against polished stone as she blocked Jerome's path to the reception desk. "Look at this mess," she announced, gesturing at his faded uniform. "Probably can't even read the address properly." Her diamond bracelet sparkled as she pointed toward a massive robotic assembly unit displaying angry red error codes. "See that $50,000 machine? My engineers have been stumped for weeks." Her cruel smile widened. "Fix it and I'll call you boss." She leaned closer, her voice dripping with venom. "But we both know trash like you could never figure it out. Have you ever watched someone's cruelest words become their biggest regret?" The silence that followed Victoria's words felt like a punch to the gut. Jerome Washington stood frozen in the gleaming lobby of Technova Industries, Seattle's premier robotics company. The building rose 43 floors into the Pacific Northwest sky, its glass walls displaying the company's achievements. Automated manufacturing systems that powered factories across 3 continents. Jerome had delivered to hundreds of corporate offices, but none like this. Digital displays showcased Technova's cutting-edge assembly robots, precision instruments that could build everything from smartphone components to aircraft parts. The company's motto blazed across the main wall in silver letters: "Engineering Tomorrow's Workforce." 20 executives in tailored suits formed a loose circle around the confrontation. Their faces showed a mixture of curiosity and discomfort. Some held coffee cups from the lobby's Italian espresso machine. Others clutched tablets displaying quarterly reports. All of them watched with the sick fascination of drivers passing a highway accident. Victoria Sterling commanded the space like a queen holding court. Her blonde hair was pulled into a severe bun that stretched her face into sharp angles. Her navy Armani blazer probably cost more than Jerome made in 3 months. Diamond earrings caught the LED lighting, throwing rainbow fragments across her pale skin. At 38, she had built Technova from a garage startup into a $2 billion empire. Forbes had called her the Iron Lady of Silicon Valley. Her biography, Breaking Glass Ceilings, sat on bestseller lists nationwide. But Jerome knew none of this corporate mythology. He only knew he had 18 more deliveries to complete before 6 p.m., and this woman was making him late for reasons he couldn't understand. "Ma'am, I just need someone to sign for this package," Jerome said quietly, holding up his scanner. His voice carried the careful politeness of someone who had learned to diffuse tension through respect and patience. Victoria's laugh was sharp as breaking glass. "Security clearance first. Can't have random people wandering our facility." She turned to her assistant, a nervous young woman with thick glasses and a clipboard clutched against her chest. "Sarah, run a full background check. Take your time. Be thorough." The assistant hesitated, her eyes darting between Victoria and Jerome. "Ms. Sterling, it's just a signature for a standard delivery. Our protocol says—" Did I stutter? Victoria's voice cracked like a whip across marble floors. Sarah scurried toward the security desk, her heels tapping frantically against polished stone. The process that normally took 2 minutes would now stretch indefinitely. Jerome checked his watch, 2:47 p.m. He was already behind schedule, and the afternoon traffic would only get worse. The lobby's atmosphere grew thick with awkward tension. Executives pretended to check their phones while stealing glances at the unfolding drama. Some whispered to colleagues about Victoria's increasingly erratic behavior. The massive robotic assembly unit continued its error sequence in the corner, red lights blinking like a distress signal. Jerome's eyes drifted toward the machine almost involuntarily. Even from 20 feet away, he could hear something wrong in its mechanical rhythm, a grinding that shouldn't be there. "Fascinating piece of equipment, isn't it?" Victoria followed his gaze, her tone dripping with mockery. Cost us $50,000. It took 6 months to install. My team of MIT graduates has been troubleshooting it for 3 weeks straight. She stepped closer to Jerome, invading his personal space. Her expensive perfume, something French and overpowering, clashed with the sterile corporate air conditioning. But I'm sure someone with your educational background wouldn't understand complex robotics. Jerome's jaw tightened imperceptibly, but he remained silent. He had learned this dance too well in his 28 years. Respond with anger, and you become the aggressor. Stay quiet, and maybe the storm passes without destroying everything you've worked for. Several executives shifted uncomfortably. A few checked their watches, clearly wanting to escape to conference rooms and quarterly reports. Dr. Patricia Carter, the company's chief technology officer, emerged from an elevator bank carrying a stack of technical manuals. Her MIT doctoral diploma hung prominently in her nearby office, visible through glass walls that kept no secrets in Technova's transparent corporate culture. Dr. Carter had been documenting concerning patterns in Victoria's leadership for months. The HR complaints were piling up like autumn leaves, all from employees of color, all dismissed as misunderstandings or cultural differences. She approached the group with measured steps, her dark eyes taking in the scene with the analytical precision of someone who solved problems for a living. "Is there a problem here?" Dr. Carter asked, her voice neutral but firm. "No problem at all," Victoria replied smoothly, not breaking eye contact with Jerome. "Just ensuring our security protocols are followed properly. Can't be too careful these days." The lie hung in the air like cigarette smoke. Everyone knew the security desk could verify a delivery driver in under 60 seconds using their standard database. Sarah was still at the terminal, typing with exaggerated slowness while shooting apologetic glances toward Jerome. Jerome's phone buzzed against his hip. A text from his dispatch manager made his stomach drop. "Third strike policy reminder. 2 late deliveries this month. Deliveries. 1 more and you're terminated. No exceptions." His throat went dry. This job paid $2 extra per package for high-end corporate deliveries, money that seemed small to people like Victoria, but meant everything to Jerome's family budget. Those extra earnings covered his mother's insulin and blood pressure medications. Without this route, he would need to find a 4th job or watch his mother ration pills she couldn't afford. At 28, Jerome Washington worked 3 positions to keep his family from drowning in medical debt and educational expenses. Morning shifts at a warehouse moving inventory for $7.50 an hour. Afternoon delivery routes navigating Seattle traffic for piece rate pay. Weekend maintenance for Mount Olive Baptist Church. Trading labor for the sense of community his grandfather had taught him to value. His sister Maya was a junior at University of Washington, studying mechanical engineering with a 3.8 GPA and dreams of designing sustainable manufacturing systems. His mother battled diabetes complications that insurance barely covered, despite her 30 years as a hospital custodian before disability forced her retirement. Victoria seemed to sense his growing anxiety like a predator smelling fear in wounded prey. "Problem with your schedule?" she asked with fake concern that fooled no one. "Maybe delivery work isn't suited for someone with your obvious limitations." A low murmur rippled through the watching executives. This was crossing a line that even corporate politics couldn't excuse, and everyone knew it. Dr. Carter stepped forward, her expression hardening like concrete. "Victoria, this is highly inappropriate and potentially—" "I'm ensuring company security." Victoria cut her off with the authority of someone who signed paychecks. "We've had issues with unreliable service providers before. Due diligence protects everyone, more lies wrapped in corporate speak." Technova's delivery records showed 0 security incidents in 3 years. But Victoria's words carried the weight of authority and the threat of unemployment. She was the CEO. Her decisions shaped careers, health insurance, and mortgage payments. Jerome's eyes wandered back to the malfunctioning robot despite himself. The error pattern seemed familiar somehow, like a song he'd heard before but couldn't quite place. The mechanical grinding occurred every 7 seconds with mathematical precision. The diagnostic display showed fault codes that didn't match the actual sounds coming from the machine. His grandfather's voice echoed across 20 years. "Every machine has a heartbeat, boy. Listen close enough, and it'll tell you exactly what's wrong." "Still staring at our expensive equipment?" Victoria's voice dripped with condescension thick as honey. "Dreaming about operating machinery you'll never afford to touch." She gestured grandly toward the robot, playing to her audience like a performer on stage. "This represents 5 years of research and development, precision engineering that requires advanced degrees to understand. MIT-level robotics. Not exactly entry-level work for people in your position." The watching executives grew more uncomfortable with each word. Several checked their watches, clearly wanting to escape to the safety of conference rooms and Excel spreadsheets. Others pulled out phones, some discreetly starting to record what was rapidly becoming a public relations nightmare. Victoria's behavior was escalating beyond normal corporate rudeness into something much uglier and more dangerous, the kind of incident that ended careers and triggered lawsuits. Sarah finally returned from the security desk, her face flushed with embarrassment, and barely contained anger at being forced to participate in this charade. "The background check is complete," she announced, her voice tight. "Everything is in perfect order. Mr. Washington is cleared for delivery." Victoria's smile faltered for just a moment before returning full force, brighter and more menacing than before. "Excellent. Now we can proceed properly." She turned back to Jerome with theatrical flair like a game show host about to reveal the final prize. "You know what? I'm feeling generous today." She gestured toward the malfunctioning robot like she was presenting the crown jewels. "That machine has stumped our entire engineering department. $50,000 of precision robotics, broken for 3 weeks. Our best minds are baffled." She paused for dramatic effect, letting tension build like pressure in a steam engine. "If you can fix it, I'll call you boss." The lobby fell silent except for the robot's mechanical grinding and the distant hum of air conditioning. Victoria's challenge hung in the air like a loaded weapon with the safety off. "But when you fail," she continued, her voice turning cruel as winter wind, "I'm calling your company to report disruption of business operations, attempted fraud, theft of company time." Jerome's blood turned to ice water in his veins. Those accusations would end his delivery career permanently. No transportation company would hire someone with fraud allegations on their record. Dr. Carter stepped forward, her voice cutting through the tension like a scalpel through skin. "I'll personally verify whatever solution is proposed, and I'll make sure everyone sees the results." The battle lines were drawn with corporate precision. 20 executives watched with a mixture of horror and fascination. Phones recorded every word for social media and potential lawsuits. The robot continued its error sequence, red lights pulsing like a wounded heart counting down to something inevitable. Victoria Sterling had just made the biggest mistake of her career. She simply didn't know it yet. "Stay with me. You won't believe what happens when she realizes who she's really dealing with." Jerome Washington's story began 30 years earlier in Detroit, Michigan, when the automotive industry was bleeding jobs like a severed artery. His grandfather, Samuel Washington, had worked the assembly line at Ford's River Rouge plant for 31 years before the layoffs came in waves that swept away entire neighborhoods. But Samuel Washington was more than just another casualty of economic collapse. He was a master mechanic who could diagnose engine problems by sound alone, a skill honed through decades of listening to metal hearts beat in perfect rhythm. When Ford discarded him at 58, he transformed his garage into a sanctuary where broken machines found new life. Jerome was 12 when he first stepped into that garage, overwhelmed by the symphony of mechanical sounds that filled the cramped space. Wrenches clinked against concrete floors. Air compressors wheezed like sleeping giants. Engines hummed in various stages of resurrection. The air tasted of motor oil and possibility. "Come here, boy," Samuel had called, his weathered hands deep inside the engine bay of a 1987 Buick LeSabre. "Put your ear right here." Jerome pressed his face against warm metal, feeling vibrations travel through his bones. "What do you hear?" "It sounds wrong," Jerome whispered, "like it's trying to tell me something." Samuel's eyes lit up with the fire of recognition. "That's exactly right. Every machine has a heartbeat. Listen close enough, and it'll tell you exactly what's wrong." Those summer afternoons became Jerome's real education. While other kids played video games, he learned to read the language of machines. Samuel taught him that engines were just mechanical poems written in steel and precision. Each component had a voice. Each malfunction sang its own unique song of distress. "This here's a connecting rod bearing," Samuel explained, his massive hands surprisingly gentle as they held delicate engine parts. "When it starts wearing out, it whispers first. Then it talks, then it screams. Most folks wait until the screaming starts, but by then it's too late." Jerome absorbed these lessons like dry earth soaking up summer rain. He learned that machines, like people, gave warning signs before they failed completely. The trick was learning their language before desperation forced you to listen. Samuel's philosophy extended beyond mechanics into life itself. "Fix the problem, not the blame," he would say whenever Jerome complained about unfairness or circumstances beyond his control. "Blame is just noise that keeps you from hearing what needs to be done." When Jerome was 16, Samuel suffered a massive heart attack while rebuilding a transmission. Jerome found him collapsed beside his workbench, surrounded by the tools that had defined his existence. The paramedics arrived too late to save the man who had spent his life saving broken machines. Jerome inherited more than just tools and memories. He inherited Samuel's belief that every problem had a solution if you listened carefully enough to understand what was really broken. The garage was sold to pay medical bills, but Jerome kept Samuel's worn leather toolbox. Inside were instruments that told stories through scratches and stains, a vintage Fluke multimeter that could trace electrical ghosts through complex circuits, precision wrenches that had tightened thousands of bolts, a stethoscope designed for listening to automotive hearts. More importantly, Jerome kept Samuel's philosophy alive through action. While working factory jobs to pay bills and support his family, Jerome completed online courses through MIT's OpenCourseWare program. Late nights after warehouse shifts, he studied mechanical engineering principles and robotics theory on a laptop he'd bought secondhand. The internet became his classroom, YouTube his laboratory. He earned certificates in automotive technology, hydraulic systems, and industrial maintenance. Each credential was a small victory in a war against circumstances that seemed designed to keep him trapped in minimum wage cycles. But the job market had other ideas about Jerome's worth. 47 engineering positions, 47 applications that made it past initial screening, 47 interviews where his credentials opened doors that his appearance seemed to close again. Human resources managers praised his technical knowledge, then hired candidates with half his experience, but the right demographic profile for company culture. The rejection letters accumulated like autumn leaves. "We've decided to pursue other candidates. Your qualifications are impressive, but we're looking for someone who better fits our team dynamic. We'll keep your resume on file for future opportunities." Each rejection stung, but Samuel's voice echoed across the years. "Fix the problem, not the blame." So Jerome fixed what he could control. He took the delivery job because it paid enough to keep his family afloat, while he continued searching for opportunities to use his real skills. He studied robotics manuals during lunch breaks. He practiced diagnostic techniques on his delivery van's engine during slow afternoons. Most importantly, he carried Samuel's toolbox wherever he went, along with the old man's unshakable belief that broken things could be made whole again if you listened carefully enough to understand their pain. Standing in Technova's pristine lobby, surrounded by executives who saw only his uniform and skin color, Jerome felt his grandfather's presence like a warm hand on his shoulder. Victoria Sterling had just presented him with a $50,000 puzzle. Samuel Washington had taught him that every machine was just waiting to tell its story to someone willing to listen. It was time to hear what this robot had to say. The crowd grew like wildfire feeds on oxygen. Word spread through Technova's glass corridors with the speed of corporate gossip, drawing engineers from their cubicles and managers from their corner offices. Within minutes, the marble lobby had transformed into an impromptu amphitheater with Jerome Washington standing at its center. Victoria Sterling basked in the attention like a performer under stage lights. Her smile widened as she counted Head's 23 employees now formed a loose circle around the malfunctioning robot. Some clutched coffee cups and tablets. Others held smartphones, already recording what promised to be either spectacular entertainment or a career-ending disaster for someone. "Ladies and gentlemen," Victoria announced, her voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to commanding boardrooms. "We have ourselves a situation." She gestured toward Jerome like a ringmaster introducing the next act. "Our delivery friend here believes he can solve what our MIT graduates haven't managed in 3 weeks. Nervous laughter rippled through the crowd. Engineers exchanged glances that said everything about their professional pride and the impossibility of what they were witnessing. Dr. Patricia Carter pushed through the gathering crowd, her expression growing darker with each step. She had seen Victoria's behavior escalate over months, but this public spectacle crossed every line of professional conduct and human decency. "This is completely inappropriate," Dr. Carter said, her voice cutting through the murmur of conversations. "Victoria, we need to stop this immediately." "On the contrary," Victoria replied, her smile never wavering, "this is exactly what we need. Accountability, transparency. If Mr. Washington believes he possesses skills our engineering team lacks, let's give him the opportunity to prove it." She pulled her iPhone from her blazer pocket, the diamond-encrusted case catching LED lighting like a tiny disco ball. "I'm going to live stream this to my social media followers. 23,000 people who follow my entrepreneurial journey deserve to see how we handle unusual situations." Jerome's stomach twisted as he watched Victoria angle her phone to capture both him and the malfunctioning robot in the frame. Her followers would see this as entertainment. Another example of their successful CEO handling workplace disruptions with characteristic firmness. "The stakes are simple," Victoria continued, playing to both her live audience and her digital followers. 10 minutes. That's all the time our delivery expert gets to accomplish what 3 weeks of professional engineering couldn't achieve. She tapped her Apple Watch with theatrical precision. "Timer starts when he touches the machine. If he fails, and let's be honest, when he fails, I'm calling his delivery company to report attempted fraud and disruption of business operations." The watching crowd stirred uneasily. Several executives exchanged worried glances. This had moved far beyond corporate politics into potential legal territory that made everyone uncomfortable. Dr. Carter stepped forward, her voice sharp as surgical steel. "I want to be absolutely clear about something. I'll personally verify whatever solution is proposed, and I'll make sure everyone sees the documented results." She turned to address the crowd directly, her authority as Chief Technology Officer carrying weight that even Victoria couldn't dismiss. "This machine has been our engineering team's focus for 3 weeks. The diagnostic codes indicate multiple system failures. Our external contractors from Robotic Solutions International have examined it twice. The manufacturer's technical support team spent 4 hours running remote diagnostics." Her words hung in the air like evidence presented to a jury. If Mr. Washington can identify the root cause, document his methodology, and implement a lasting solution in 10 minutes, that would represent a significant achievement worthy of recognition and respect. Victoria's smile flickered momentarily before returning full force. Dr. Carter had just raised the stakes in ways Victoria hadn't anticipated. "Of course," Victoria said smoothly. "Recognition where recognition is due." If he fixes it, really fixes it, with documented proof, I'll call him boss, just like I promised. She emphasized the word boss with enough sarcasm to make several people wince. The robot dominated the corner of the lobby like a metallic monument to technological ambition. Standing 6 feet tall and 4 feet wide, it represented Technova's flagship product, an automated assembly system capable of building complex electronic components with microscopic precision. Red error lights pulsed across its control panel in a pattern that had frustrated the engineering team for weeks. Diagnostic screens displayed fault codes that seemed to change randomly. Hydraulic pressure warnings, electrical system alerts, mechanical timing errors that made no logical sense. Jerome approached the machine slowly, his grandfather's toolbox feeling heavy in his right hand. The crowd pressed closer, phones recording his every movement. Victoria's live stream showed 47 viewers and climbing. "Remember, everyone," Victoria announced to her audience, "if he fixes it, I'll call him boss." Some employees began whispering among themselves. The engineering team that had struggled with this problem for 3 weeks watched with mixture of skepticism and curiosity. Could someone in a delivery uniform really succeed where they had failed? Jerome set his toolbox down beside the robot, the worn leather contrasting sharply with the machine's pristine steel surfaces. He could feel dozens of eyes tracking his movements, waiting for the inevitable failure that would confirm their assumptions about his capabilities. But something else was happening that the crowd couldn't see. Jerome was listening. The robot's mechanical rhythm told a story that diagnostic computers had missed. Every 7 seconds, a grinding sound occurred deep within the assembly mechanism. The error lights followed a pattern that matched the sound, not the displayed fault codes. "This is quite the show," someone whispered behind him. $10 says he gives up in 2 minutes, another voice replied. Victoria checked her watch with theatrical precision. "Timer starts now." Jerome closed his eyes and placed his hand on the robot's frame, feeling vibrations travel through steel and into his bones. His grandfather's voice echoed across 20 years of memory. "Every machine has a heartbeat, boy. Listen close enough, and it'll tell you exactly what's wrong." The crowd held its breath, waiting for him to fail. They had no idea they were about to witness something that would change everything they thought they knew about talent, expertise, and the dangerous assumptions people make based on appearance alone. Victoria Sterling was 60 seconds away from discovering the biggest mistake of her career. Jerome Washington was about to show them all what listening really meant. Jerome Washington placed his weathered hand against the robot's steel frame and closed his eyes. The crowd fell silent, watching this strange ritual with mixture of curiosity and barely contained skepticism. Victoria's live stream had climbed to 89 viewers, her followers waiting to witness what promised to be an entertaining failure. But Jerome wasn't performing for the cameras. He was listening to a conversation that only he could hear. The machine spoke in a language his grandfather had taught him 20 years ago in a Detroit garage. Every vibration carried meaning. Every sound told part of a larger story. The diagnostic computers had been listening with their ears. Jerome listened with his entire body. What he heard made his eyes snap open. Discovery 1. The heartbeat reveals its secret. "The problem isn't mechanical," Jerome announced, his voice carrying across the marble lobby with quiet confidence. "It's hiding behind mechanical symptoms." Victoria's smile widened. "Oh, really?" "Our engineering team seems to think otherwise." Jerome ignored her sarcasm and addressed Dr. Carter directly. "Ma'am, could you run the robot through one complete assembly cycle while I listen?" Dr. Carter nodded and activated the control sequence. The massive machine hummed to life, its robotic arms beginning the precise choreography of electronic component assembly. Red error lights immediately began flashing across the diagnostic panel. Jerome moved around the robot like a doctor examining a patient, pressing his ear against different sections of the frame. The watching crowd exchanged glances that said everything about what they thought of this unconventional diagnostic approach. "There," Jerome said suddenly, pointing to a specific location near the robot's rotational assembly joint. "Every 7.3 seconds. Do you hear that grinding?" The engineers strained to listen. A few nodded hesitantly, catching the subtle sound Jerome had identified. "That's not bearing wear like your diagnostics suggest," Jerome continued, pulling his grandfather's vintage stethoscope from the toolbox. "Bearing wear creates continuous friction noise. This is intermittent, rhythmic, and it matches the error pattern exactly." He placed the stethoscope against the robot's frame and listened intently while the machine completed another cycle. The grinding occurs during rotational phase 3 of the assembly sequence. But watch the diagnostic display. The error codes trigger 2 seconds after the sound, not during it. Dr. Carter leaned forward, her analytical mind engaging with Jerome's methodology. "What's the significance of that delay?" "It means the grinding isn't causing the errors," Jerome explained, his voice gaining confidence as the technical puzzle revealed itself. "The grinding is a symptom. Something else is causing both the sound and the system failures." He gestured toward the diagnostic screens with the authority of someone who understood what they were really seeing. "Your computers are chasing the wrong problem. They're detecting mechanical stress in the rotational assembly, so they assume that's where the fault originates. But mechanical stress can be caused by external factors." Victoria's smile faltered slightly. This wasn't the confused fumbling she had expected. Discovery 2. The Electrical Ghost. Jerome opened his toolbox and withdrew his grandfather's vintage Fluke Multimeter A device that had diagnosed thousands of electrical problems across 3 decades of automotive work. The crowd watched with growing fascination as he began tracing circuits with practiced precision. "Ma'am," he addressed Dr. Carter, "when did these errors first start appearing?" 3 weeks ago, she replied. "Right after we completed the HVAC system upgrade for the building." Jerome's eyes lit up with recognition. "That's the missing piece." "May I check something?" He connected the multimeter to various test points around the robot's electrical system, his movements efficient and purposeful. The vintage device looked ancient compared to Technova's modern diagnostic equipment, but Jerome wielded it with the skill of a master craftsman. "Run another assembly cycle," he requested. "But this time, I want to monitor the electrical environment during the process." The robot hummed to life again. Jerome watched his multimeter display intently, his expression growing more confident with each passing second. "There," he said suddenly, pointing to a spike in the electrical readings. "Did you see that power fluctuation? It happens exactly when the building's HVAC system cycles on." Dr. Carter moved closer, her engineering background allowing her to follow Jerome's diagnostic logic. "You're suggesting electromagnetic interference?" "Not suggesting." "Proving," Jerome replied, running the test sequence 3 more times. Each cycle produced identical results, electrical spikes that coincided perfectly with the robot's error patterns. "Your new HVAC system uses variable frequency drives for energy efficiency," Jerome explained to the mesmerized crowd. VFDs generate electromagnetic noise that can interfere with sensitive electronic equipment if the shielding isn't properly installed. He gestured toward the robot's control cabinet. The interference creates voltage fluctuations in the servo motor control circuits. The servos lose precise positioning for milliseconds, causing mechanical stress that produces the grinding sound. The control system detects this stress and throws error codes. Victoria's live stream had climbed to over 200 viewers, but her confident commentary had dried up completely. "But our $20,000 diagnostic equipment didn't detect any electrical issues," one of the engineers protested. Jerome nodded respectfully. "Because you were looking for hard electrical fault shorts, opens, component failures. This is intermittent electromagnetic interference that only occurs when specific conditions align. Your equipment was focused on the mechanical symptoms, not the electrical cause. He held up his grandfather's ancient multimeter with something approaching reverence. Sometimes the oldest tools see things the newest ones miss. This meter has analog circuitry that responds to electrical noise differently than digital systems. My grandfather taught me that modern doesn't always mean better, it just means different. Discovery 3. The elegant solution. The fix is actually simple, Jerome announced, his voice carrying the quiet confidence of someone who understood the problem completely. $3 part and proper wire routing. He reached into his toolbox and produced a small cylindrical component that looked insignificant compared to the $50,000 robot. Ferrite core, he explained, holding the device up for everyone to see. It's designed to suppress electromagnetic interference in electronic circuits. I keep them in my van for CB radio installations. Victoria found her voice again, desperation creeping into her tone. You're telling me a $3 part can fix what our engineers couldn't solve in 3 weeks? Not just the part, Jerome replied patiently. Proper installation and wire routing to eliminate the interference path. The solution isn't expensive, it's about understanding what's really broken. He moved to the robot's control cabinet and began tracing wire paths with the systematic approach of someone who had solved hundreds of similar problems. The servo motor power cables are running parallel to the control signal wires for 18 inches inside this cabinet. When electromagnetic interference hits the power cables, it induces noise in the signal wires through magnetic coupling. Jerome demonstrated the proper cable separation technique, his hands moving with practiced efficiency. Route the power cables away from signal wires, install the ferrite core on the signal cable to absorb remaining interference, and add a ground strap to improve electrical shielding. The modifications took exactly 3 minutes and 47 seconds. Test it now, Jerome said, stepping back from the machine. Dr. Carter initiated a complete assembly sequence. The robot hummed to life with mechanical precision, its arms moving through the complex choreography of component assembly. No grinding sounds, no error codes, no red warning lights. The lobby fell completely silent except for the smooth whisper of perfectly functioning machinery. One complete cycle, then another, then a third, fourth, and fifth cycle without a single error. Run the diagnostics, Dr. Carter commanded, her voice tight with amazement. The diagnostic screens displayed clean system status across every monitored parameter. No mechanical stress warnings. No electrical faults, no hydraulic pressure anomalies. Dr. Patricia Carter, Chief Technology Officer with a doctoral degree from MIT, stared at the diagnostic displays with the expression of someone witnessing something that defied her understanding of how the world worked. This is graduate-level troubleshooting methodology, she said finally, her voice carrying across the silent lobby. Systematic root cause analysis, electromagnetic compatibility principles, signal integrity concepts. She turned to Jerome with genuine respect, replacing her initial skepticism. Where did you study engineering? Jerome's answer was quiet but proud. My grandfather's garage in Detroit. And MIT OpenCourseWare. Every night after work for the past 6 years. The crowd of executives stood frozen, processing what they had just witnessed. Their assumptions about education, expertise, and intelligence lay shattered around them like broken glass. Victoria Sterling stared at her phone screen, watching 237 viewers witness her public humiliation in real time. The delivery driver she had mocked as trash had just accomplished what her team of MIT graduates couldn't manage in 3 weeks, using a $3 part and knowledge that couldn't be bought with money or inherited through privilege. Jerome Washington had proven that expertise doesn't wear a suit and tie. Sometimes it carries a toolbox and listens to the heartbeat of broken machines. The silence in Technova's lobby stretched like a taut wire ready to snap. 243 viewers watched Victoria Sterling's live stream as the impossible became undeniable reality. The $50,000 robot hummed with mechanical perfection, its diagnostic screens glowing green with system status reports that had eluded MIT graduates for 3 weeks. Jerome Washington stood beside his grandfather's worn toolbox, sweat beading on his forehead despite the building's climate control. The ferrite core installation had taken less than 4 minutes, but the weight of dozens of staring eyes made each second feel like an eternity. Dr. Patricia Carter moved to the robot's diagnostic terminal with scientific precision, her fingers dancing across the control interface as she initiated the most comprehensive system analysis available. The crowd pressed closer, smartphones recording every keystroke and display reading. "Full spectrum diagnostics," she announced, her voice carrying the authority of someone who understood the technical significance of what they were witnessing. Every sensor, every circuit, every mechanical component under maximum operational stress. The robot responded with mechanical ballet, its arms moving through assembly sequences that pushed every system to design limits. Precision movements that required microsecond timing. Hydraulic pressures that tested every seal and joint. Electrical loads that challenged every circuit and connection. Green lights cascaded across the diagnostic display like digital rain. "System nominal," Dr. Carter reported, her voice tight with amazement. "0 errors across all monitored parameters. Mechanical tolerance within 0.02% of specifications. Electrical systems are stable under full load." She turned to face the crowd, her MIT credentials and 15 years of engineering experience lending gravity to her next words. "This machine is operating better than it did when we first installed it 6 months ago." Victoria Sterling felt the ground shifting beneath her designer heels like quicksand made of corporate reputation and social media humiliation. Her live stream comments section exploded with viewers demanding to know why she had treated Jerome so cruelly. That's impossible," she stammered, grasping for any explanation that might salvage her crumbling narrative. "He must have sabotaged it originally." "This is obviously a setup. He broke it, then fixed his own damage." The accusation hung in the air like toxic smoke, desperate and vicious. Dr. Carter's expression hardened to granite. "Victoria, that's a serious allegation. Are you prepared to support it with evidence?" "Check the security footage," Victoria demanded, her voice rising with hysteria born of desperation. "I want every minute reviewed. This delivery driver has been planning this fraud for weeks." The crowd stirred uneasily as Victoria's accusations became increasingly wild and unfounded. Several executives exchanged glances that spoke volumes about their CEO's rapidly deteriorating judgment. Dr. Carter pulled out her tablet and accessed Technova's security system with administrative credentials. "Fine. Let's review the evidence." The lobby's main display screen flickered to life, showing security camera footage from the past month. Dr. Carter fast-forwarded through weeks of failed diagnostic attempts, highlighting timestamps that told an undeniable story. "Here's footage from 3 weeks ago," she announced, showing the robot's first malfunction during a client demonstration. "Note the timestamp before Mr. Washington ever entered this building." The video showed the robot failing spectacularly during a presentation to potential investors, its error lights flashing in the same pattern Jerome had diagnosed minutes earlier. "Here's footage from last Tuesday," Dr. Carter continued, showing our engineering team's latest failed repair attempt. Again, Mr. Washington is nowhere in the building. More footage revealed engineers replacing mechanical components, running diagnostic software, consulting technical manuals with increasing frustration. "And here's this Morsing security log," Dr. Carter added, delivering the final blow to Victoria's conspiracy theory. Mr. Washington's first entry into Technova was 37 minutes ago. The robot was already displaying error codes when he arrived. The evidence was overwhelming and irrefutable. Victoria's accusations crumbled like sand castles hit by rising tide. But Dr. Carter wasn't finished. She opened another application on her tablet, revealing audio recordings that made several people gasp audibly. "I've been documenting concerning patterns in leadership behavior for months," she announced, her voice carrying the weight of accumulated evidence. Today's incident represents the culmination of systematic discriminatory treatment that violates both company policy and federal employment law. Audio clips played through the lobby's sound system, capturing Victoria's voice, making increasingly damaging statements. People like you shouldn't even be allowed in here. Trash like you could never figure it out. Can't even afford decent shoes. Each recording was time-stamped and legally documented. The crowd listened with growing horror as the full extent of Victoria's bias became undeniable. Jerome stood quietly through this revelation, feeling no satisfaction in Victoria's exposure. His grandfather's voice echoed across the years. Fix the problem, not the blame. The problem was bigger than one broken robot or one biased executive. The problem was a system that judged human worth by appearance instead of ability. Dr. Carter turned to Victoria with the cold precision of someone delivering a professional verdict. Based on documented evidence and witnessed behavior, you violated multiple company policies regarding workplace discrimination, created a hostile work environment, and exposed Technova to significant legal liability. Victoria's phone showed 268 viewers watching her career implode in real time. Her own live stream had become evidence of her professional destruction. The moment of truth had arrived with mathematical certainty. Victoria Sterling stared at Jerome Washington, the man she had mocked as trash, and realized he had just demonstrated more technical expertise, professional dignity, and human decency than she had shown in months of corporate leadership. Her voice came out as barely a whisper, but the lobby's acoustics carried every word to every recording device. You fixed it, boss. The words fell like a judge's gavel, sealing her fate and validating every lesson Samuel Washington had ever taught his grandson about listening to the heartbeat of broken things. Some machines could be repaired with $3 parts and proper technique. Others were beyond salvation. The words, "You fixed it, boss," echoed through Technova's marble lobby like a judge's final verdict. Victoria's admission, captured by dozens of smartphones and broadcast to her own social media followers, marked the end of one career and the beginning of another. Dr. Patricia Carter stepped forward with the measured authority of someone who recognized exceptional talent when she witnessed it. Her MIT credentials and 15 years of engineering leadership had taught her that true expertise often came in unexpected packages. "Mr. Washington," she said, her voice carrying across the silent lobby, "I'd like to offer you a formal interview for our senior robotics technician position. Starting salary is $85,000 annually, with full benefits and educational advancement opportunities." Jerome felt his grandfather's presence like a warm hand on his shoulder. Samuel Washington had always believed that talent would eventually find recognition if you kept listening to the heartbeat of broken things. "I'd be honored to interview," Jerome replied quietly, his dignity intact despite the extraordinary circumstances. Sarah Martinez, Technova's HR director, emerged from the elevator bank with a tablet in hand and grim determination in her expression. She had been monitoring the situation remotely through security feeds, documenting every violation of company policy and federal employment law. "Ms. Sterling," Sarah announced, her voice carrying official authority, "you're suspended immediately pending a full investigation into discriminatory conduct and creation of a hostile work environment." The crowd of executives watched in stunned silence as corporate justice unfolded with swift precision. Several pulled out business cards, already calculating how to distance themselves from Victoria's toxic leadership. Dr. Carter addressed the engineering team directly. "I want everyone to understand what just happened here. Mr. Washington demonstrated systematic problem-solving methodology that our entire department missed. His approach should be studied and integrated into our diagnostic protocols." Engineers who had smirked at Jerome's unconventional methods now approached with genuine respect and curiosity. Questions about electromagnetic compatibility principles replaced condescending assumptions about educational credentials. "We need someone to lead our field diagnostics team," Dr. Carter continued, looking directly at Jerome. Someone who understands that the most sophisticated equipment means nothing without the wisdom to interpret what it's really telling you. Jerome nodded, understanding that this opportunity represented more than just personal advancement. It was validation of his grandfather's belief that expertise existed everywhere, waiting for someone willing to listen. The delivery route that had brought him to Technova's lobby was ending. His engineering career was about to begin. Within 48 hours, Victoria Sterling's live-streamed humiliation had transformed from a corporate incident to a viral phenomenon. The video accumulated over 1.2 million views across multiple platforms, with hashtags like #FixIt and I'll call you boss and #Justice for Jerome trending globally. The board of directors convened an emergency meeting that Tuesday morning, their faces grim as they reviewed legal exposure reports prepared by Technova's corporate counsel. The liability was staggering: potential discrimination lawsuits, EEC violations, and public relations damage that threatened client contracts worth millions. The investigation has uncovered a pattern of discriminatory behavior spanning 18 months, Board Chairman Robert Hayes announced to the assembled directors. Ms. Sterling's conduct has cost Technova approximately $200,000 in wrongful termination settlements and lost talent acquisition. Personnel files revealed the devastating truth. Marcus Thompson, a black mechanical engineer with Stanford credentials, had been terminated for performance issues despite consistently exceeding project goals. Angela Rodriguez, a Latina software developer, had been passed over for promotion 7 times while less qualified colleagues advanced. David Kim, an Asian American project manager, had been relegated to administrative duties after challenging Victoria's budget allocations. Each case followed the same pattern: minority employees facing escalating scrutiny, impossible standards, and eventual removal from positions of influence. The Seattle Times business section ran a front-page story titled, "Tech CEO's Downfall Exposes Silicon Valley's Hidden Bias." Industry publications dissected Victoria's leadership failures with surgical precision. Her biography, Breaking Glass Ceilings, was pulled from bookstore shelves as publishers distanced themselves from the controversy. By Thursday, Victoria's professional network had evaporated like morning fog. 3 board positions she held at other companies requested her immediate resignation. Speaking engagements worth hundreds of thousands of dollars were canceled. The executive search firm that had placed her at Technova quietly removed her from their client roster. Pacific Northwest Business Weekly published an exposé revealing that Victoria's innovative management techniques had driven away 12 talented engineers over 2 years. The article quoted former employees describing a toxic culture where success depended more on demographics than performance. "She created an environment where your skin color mattered more than your skill level," testified former engineer Patricia Williams, who had left Technova for a competitor. Watching that video felt like vindication for everyone she had marginalized. The Equal Employment Opportunity Commission launched a formal investigation based on Dr. Carter's meticulously documented evidence. Years of recorded conversations, email communications, and witness statements painted a picture of systematic discrimination that would take months to fully investigate. Victoria's social media presence, once a carefully curated showcase of entrepreneurial success, became a liability that public relations consultants couldn't repair. Comment sections filled with criticism from former employees sharing their own stories of discriminatory treatment. Her personal brand, built on the mythology of meritocracy and fair opportunity, crumbled under the weight of evidence that she had systematically denied those same opportunities to others based on prejudice rather than performance. Meanwhile, Express Delivery Solutions promoted Jerome to Regional Route Supervisor with a commendation letter that would hang in their corporate office. His former dispatcher, Janet Morrison, publicly apologized for the company's initial threat to terminate him. "Jerome Washington represents the best of our workforce," Morrison announced in a company-wide memo. "His professionalism under extreme pressure reflects the values we strive to embody." The viral video had an unexpected side effect. Corporations across Seattle began re-evaluating their delivery protocols and vendor relationships. Several companies implemented new policies requiring respectful treatment of all service providers, citing the Technova incident as a cautionary tale. Victoria Sterling's attempt to humiliate someone she considered beneath her had instead exposed the ugliness of her own character to the world. The woman who had built her reputation on breaking barriers had revealed herself as someone who reinforced them for others. Justice had arrived not through legal proceedings or corporate punishment, but through the simple act of truth being witnessed by enough people to make denial impossible. Sometimes karma doesn't need a courtroom. Sometimes it just needs a camera. 6 months later, Jerome Washington stood in his corner office at Technova Industries, watching Seattle's skyline through floor-to-ceiling windows. His grandfather's worn toolbox sat prominently on his desk beside a brass nameplate reading Senior Diagnostics Manager. His team had solved 43 complex machinery problems using the listening techniques Samuel Washington had taught in a Detroit garage decades earlier. Maya graduated summa cum laude with her mechanical engineering degree, her tuition finally secure. Their mother's diabetes was under control, her medications no longer rationed. The brass plaque beside his toolbox bore his grandfather's eternal wisdom. Every machine has a heartbeat. Listen close enough and it'll tell you exactly what's wrong. Jerome kept that lesson alive, mentoring other overlooked technicians who possessed skills the world had chosen not to see. Talent exists everywhere. It just takes someone willing to listen to recognize it. If you've ever been underestimated, share this story. There's a detail only sharp-eyed viewers will notice at minute 432. Watch it again. Subscribe to Blacktail's Stories for more stories of underdogs who changed everything, because everyone deserves their moment to prove their worth.